Many of you are familiar with Mark Stein. He's an occasional guest host for Rush. He's also a columnist for the National Review and an author. He specializes in a couple of topics, including this one. He's of the opinion that this is all going to end very, very badly. That when you have a spoiled, rotten society with people leeching off of everyone else, not taking responsibility for their own lives and thinking that the money that others have somehow should go to you to pay for your general bumness of your life, that you can't ever get people out of that mentality. I'll merely say, look at the whining, carping, and complaining from the average Wisconsin public school teacher over the past year. The austerity measures they've been put on are nothing, but they're in an all-out total tantrum. Think about it. These people still get to retire in their mid-50s and draw massive pensions. The sort of situation that the Frenchies have been doling out to everyone. Merely being told you got to kick in a little bit to be able to have those benefits. They're going crazy. What Governor Walker has done in Wisconsin is nothing in comparison to what happens to happen at the federal level. We have to convert Medicare to a system in which people use vouchers to go out and get their own health insurance rather than assume that government's going to pay for everything Medicare pays for now. We've got to reform Social Security. We certainly have to spend a lot less money on discretionary spending. Right now, virtually the entire deficit is discretionary spending. If you cut out all discretionary, when I say discretionary spending, that's everything other than the entitlements and defense. If you cut all of that out, we might balance our budget. That means transportation aids, federal education aid, block grants, all that stuff. Half the federal employment workforce. There's going to have to be significant cuts to balance our budget here, austerity. The alternative is that our debt gets to be so great that the interest on the debt takes up an ever larger portion of the federal budget, that you have to slash everything everywhere else or you default on your bonds. The austerity is going to have to come because if it doesn't come, the economies of these countries are going to collapse and they're going to lose their nations. There will be insurrection. There will be no order. There won't be any money left. But even as close to the brink as the Europeans are, they can't accept this. They can't abide it. I think what's happening in Europe is profound. You saw the riots in Greece when they were told that they'd have to embark upon an austerity program and some of their welfare would be cut off. This begs a number of questions. Is the average human being really a lazy slob without a work ethic? Or does years of government dependency create people and turn them into that? For heaven's sakes, for most of civilization, Western Europe did better than most of the rest of the world. This recklessness and irresponsibility is a relatively new thing. True, it has its roots in socialism. One of the most toxic, evil ideas ever developed by modern man was socialism. The notion that you could take money from others, have government run and provide everything, and everybody could live happily ever after. The great flaw in the system is most people figured out, why should I work very hard if I'm going to be taken care of by everyone else? So you end up producing an entire society of leeches, deadbeats, bums. For years and years and years and years, the fallback plan was that somebody would bail you out. And, in the end, they're always looking at the United States. Well, the United States can't allow all of this chaos because their own banks hold a number of these bonds. I'm going to say two initials and a word right now, MF Global. MF Global was the financial firm that was run by the former head of Goldman Sachs, prominent Democratic politician, John Corzine. Governor of New Jersey, used to run Goldman Sachs. He took over MF Global. The company collapsed. There are still investigations into where the account holders' money went. We do know this. The biggest reason that MF Global collapsed is that it had a lot of its money into European bonds. The European bonds didn't even default. They merely lost some of their value because of the fear of default. This was enough to bring down MF Global, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. Imagine if you actually had defaults. Look at the number of American financial institutions that would go under. The point that I'm making is the United States and our banks and our government doesn't have any money to bail Europe out. What the European deadbeats haven't noticed is that we're following them on the same path. We're busted out too. Who are they counting on next? China? You think China will lift a finger? I am a pessimist on the whole thing. I'd like to be optimistic about our own country. But I fear that even if the Republicans get in power and try to pass the reforms that we need, that there's just going to be wholesale rejection on the part of the American public. For heaven's sakes, look at Wisconsin. All Governor Walker did was give us a mini austerity program. He reduced the amount of money that state government was spending in order to balance our books, and did it so well that the majority of the state got a property tax cut. And our finances are stabilized. The 80% of the state that doesn't work for the state of Wisconsin or a local employer never even noticed anything. Yet they're ready to toss him out of office. They're ready to toss Walker out of office. Can you imagine what they do to a guy who slashes federal spending and reforms Social Security and Medicare? A leech sucks the blood out of something else. When you yank the leech off of the host that he's blood sucking, the leech ain't happy. And I think what you saw in the French results yesterday is that the leeches spoke out. I think you see in the attempt to remove Walker that the leeches are rising up here. It's hard to see a good end to any of this. If this were the Greek elections, you could say, okay, we know the Greeks are nuts. We'll figure out what to do with them. France isn't even one of the most far-gone nations. The austerity measures in France were modest. They weren't even a part of the PEGs. Remember, the PEGs are the 5 countries in Europe that have the worst finances. Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, Spain. Called PEGs because of the initials of the 5 nations. France wasn't even part of it. Their austerity campaign was modest. Now, admittedly, there are other issues. Sarkozy was an idiot. He was a lousy politician. He never fully embraced the austerity. He came across as a klutz. There was corruption in his government. Elections are never one-issue things. Still, one gets the impression that the majority of Europe is telling Germany, buzz off. We're not going to let you tell us what we have to do. The disastrous mistake that the Germans made was agreeing to be part of the European Union, which threw them